My brother, Harry, called me a cold-hearted career woman with no real responsibilities after quitting yet another job. He expected me to fix it, just like our mother, Molly. This time, I'd had enough. I accepted a promotion overseas, and when they tried to guilt me, I blocked them both and never looked back. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The migraine had been clinging to me for 36 hours, a relentless, throbbing vice grip behind my right eye. I was sitting at my kitchen island, the lights dimmed, nursing a cup of ginger tea that was doing absolutely nothing. My laptop was open, displaying the logistics dashboard for our North American freight operations, but the glowing red indicators felt like tiny needles stabbing at my brain. I was supposed to be finalizing the Q3 reports, but I could barely string a thought together. The stress of the last few weeks, late shipments, a sudden fuel cost spike, and a warehouse strike in Chicago had taken its toll. I felt brittle, exhausted, and utterly spent. That's when my phone lit up, buzzing angrily on the granite countertop. The name, Harry, flashed on the screen. A familiar spike of adrenaline, sharp and unpleasant, cut through the fog of my headache. I stared at it, my stomach tightening. He never called on a Tuesday afternoon unless he needed something. I let it ring twice more before finally sighing and tapping the screen. "Hello, Harry, what's wrong?" I didn't have the energy for pleasantries. "Wow, nice to talk to you too, Jules." His voice, obnoxiously cheerful, boomed through the speaker. "Just calling my big sister to see how she's doing." "I've got a migraine, Harry, and I'm buried in work. Is this important?" There was a put-upon sigh. "See, this is your problem, you're always buried in work. You don't know how to live. Anyway, I quit my job." I closed my eyes, the throbbing behind my eye pulsed. "You? What? Harry, that was a good job. It was a management track position at a logistics firm. I pulled a lot of strings to get you that interview." "It was boring," he scoffed, as if that explained everything. "It was a toxic environment, Jules. My boss was this corporate drone who just didn't get my vision. I'm an idea guy, not some spreadsheet monkey." I rubbed my temple, the familiar script starting to play out. "Vision? Harry, it was data entry with a path to team lead. What are you going to do for rent? It's due in a week." "Well, that's kind of why I'm calling," he said, the false cheer vanishing, replaced by that familiar, wheedling tone. "I'm a little short this month, and next month probably, just until my new venture gets off the ground." "What new venture?" "I'm thinking artisan crypto brewing, or maybe a high-end dog-walking collective. Still workshopping it." I felt a cold, sharp anger slice through my pain. "No." "No? What do you mean, no?" His voice went from wheedling to indignant in a split second. "It's just a couple thousand to tide me over." "No, Harry, I'm not giving you any more money. I've been covering your short months for 5 years. I paid your deposit on that apartment. I paid off your last credit card. I'm done." The line went silent for a moment, and I could picture him perfectly, his face reddening, his jaw setting in that stubborn, childish way. "Must be nice," he finally spat, his voice dripping with venom. "Sitting up in your fancy condo, playing with your little spreadsheets, having no real responsibilities. You have no idea what it's like in the real world, Juliet. You don't have a husband. You don't have kids. All you have is that stupid job. What else are you going to do with all that money?" His words hit me harder than the migraine. No real responsibilities. I thought of the mortgage I paid entirely on my own. The 60-hour weeks I'd worked to get my last promotion. The fact that I was the only one in our family with a retirement account, the one who would inevitably have to care for our mother, Molly, in her old age because Harry was a black hole of financial irresponsibility. "I'm hanging up now, Harry," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Yeah, you do that. Run away, just like you always do," he shouted. "You're a cold-hearted career woman, Jules. Mom was right about you." He hung up. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen, the buzzing of the refrigerator the only sound. The anger was so potent it temporarily eclipsed my headache. Mom was right about you. So, she was in on this too. The enabler and the endless disappointment united once again. I looked at my laptop. The dashboard was still blinking its angry red lights, but next to that tab was another one I'd had open all day. It was an email from Michael, my boss, the VP of Global Operations. The subject line read, Ari, Singapore position. He had offered it to me last week, a full promotion to Director of Southeast Asian Operations. It was a massive step up, a huge relocation, a new life. I had been hesitating, worried about being so far from my family, worried about who would handle the inevitable emergencies Harry created. Harry's words echoed in my head, no real responsibilities. My hand, steady now, moved from the teacup to the trackpad. I clicked on the email. I read the offer one more time, the salary, the moving package, the start date in 6 weeks. All my life, I had been the responsible one, the fixer, the backstop. I had put my own dreams on hold, stayed in my hometown, and built a cage for myself out of duty and guilt. And for what? To be mocked by the very person I was sacrificing everything for. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. I'm done. I typed my reply to Michael. Dear Michael, thank you again for this incredible opportunity. After careful consideration, I am thrilled to formally accept the position. I am ready for the challenge and look forward to the move. Best, Juliet. I hit send. A strange, light feeling spread through my chest. The migraine was still there, but it felt distant now, as if it belonged to someone else. I had just set my entire life on a new course, severing the anchor that had held me in place for over a decade. The betrayal wasn't just that Harry quit his job. It wasn't just the insult. It was the sudden, horrifying realization that my sacrifices weren't just unappreciated, they were invisible. The hours after hitting send were a blur of adrenaline and anxiety. The decision was made, but the reality of it hadn't fully settled. I immediately took a dose of my strongest migraine medication and fell into a fitful, dream-haunted sleep. When I woke up, it was dark outside, and my phone was glowing with a series of missed notifications. My head felt clearer, the sharp edges of the pain sanded down to a dull ache. The silence in my condo felt different now, not just empty, but peaceful. I had made a choice for me. It was a terrifying and exhilarating sensation. I padded into the kitchen to get some water, and that's when I saw the texts. 7 missed calls from Harry, 4 from my mother, Molly, and a string of text messages. I opened Harry's first. Harry, pick up the phone, we need to talk. Harry, you can't just hang up on me like that. Harry, did you seriously tell me no, after everything I'm going through? Harry, Mom's upset. You really did it this time, Jules. Harry, call me. I rolled my eyes. Everything I'm going through? The manufactured crisis of quitting a job he hadn't even held for 6 months. I deleted the thread without replying. Then I opened Molly's. Molly, Juliet dear, please call me. Harry is very upset. Molly, he told me you two had a fight. He just needs a little help, honey. You know how he is. Molly, your brother is just trying to find his way. It's not easy for him. Molly, Juliet, answer your phone. This is not how we treat family. I sighed, the familiar weight of her expectations settling on me. For my mother, family was a one-way street. It meant I gave, and Harry took. It meant I was the responsible adult, and he was the perpetual child, and she was the long-suffering mediator who always took his side. I was about to type a message, something diplomatic and firm, when a new text from her came through. It was the one that would change everything. Molly, he's family, Juliet. He made a mistake, but you're the stable one. You need to fix this. Fix this. The words vibrated with a lifetime of implicit command. Fix Harry's bad grades. Fix his car after he crashed it. Fix his finances after he maxed out another credit card on some ridiculous get-rich-quick scheme. I was the family mechanic, and I was perpetually on call. I stared at the message, the anger from the day before returning, but this time it was cold and sharp. Fix this wasn't a request for help. It was a demand that I erase my own boundaries, ignore the blatant disrespect, and restore the toxic status quo that was slowly suffocating me. I typed back a single sentence. "No, Mom, I won't be fixing this, not this time." I put the phone down on the counter, my hand shaking slightly. I had never, not once, spoken to her like that. The no to Harry had been an impulse. This no to my mother was a declaration. My phone rang almost instantly. It was her. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. Finally, it went to voicemail. A new text popped up. "Molly, I don't know what's gotten into you, young lady. We will discuss this tomorrow. I'm coming over after my book club." My heart hammered. A confrontation. A discussion that would be a 3-hour guilt trip, complete with tears hers, accusations hers, and demands for an apology from me to Harry. I looked around my condo, my sanctuary, the place I had paid for with those 60-hour weeks Harry so clearly despised. She was just going to show up, use her key, and walk in, ready to steamroll me back into compliance. And in that moment, I realized something crucial. They hadn't just forgotten my sacrifices, they had forgotten who I was. They saw Juliet the fixer, Juliet the bank, Juliet the endless well of support. They had forgotten Juliet, the senior logistics manager, the woman who managed multi-million-dollar contracts, who negotiated with hardened shipping magnates, who could track a single container from a port in Shanghai to a warehouse in Ohio down to the minute. They had forgotten that my entire career was built on one single skill: managing complex systems and anticipating every possible point of failure. Harry thought I was just a spreadsheet monkey. He and my mother had forgotten one crucial thing. I was the one who built the spreadsheet. A slow, cold smile touched my lips. "Okay, Mom," I whispered to the phone. "Come on over." I walked over to my desk, the headache completely gone, replaced by a crystalline, diamond-hard focus. I picked up my phone and sent a text, not to my family, but to Michael. Michael, apologies for the late hour. Regarding the Singapore transfer, I need to add a stipulation. I need my relocation package to include the services of your top corporate law firm. I'll be restructuring my personal assets, and I need it done immediately. His reply came back in less than a minute. "Michael, done. Welcome to the new league, Juliet. They won't know what hit them." I sat down, pulled out a fresh legal pad, and began to write. At the top of the page, I wrote 2 words: exit strategy. They wanted me to fix it. Oh, I was going to fix it. I was going to fix it so permanently they would never be able to break it again. The fog of obligation had finally lifted, and for the first time, I saw the entire board. And I was finally ready to make my move. To understand why this decision felt like breaking out of a prison, you have to understand my family. My father passed away when I was 16 and Harry was 11. It wasn't a dramatic, tragic death. It was a slow, sad decline from a heart condition. But his absence created a vacuum. I, being the older child and so mature for my age, stepped into it. Molly, my mother, leaned on me, heavily. While other kids were at football games, I was learning how to read utility bills. While they were applying for colleges out of state, I was applying to the local university so I could live at home, work part-time, and help Molly, who had just started her teaching career, manage the house. Harry, in the meantime, was designated the grieving child. His grief was allowed to be loud and messy. He was excused from chores, his bad grades were understandable. His teenage rebellions were just him acting out. I never got to act out, I just acted. I majored in business and logistics, not because it was my passion, but because it was practical. It offered a clear path to a good salary. I got a job at a local shipping firm right out of college and started climbing. Every rung I climbed meant more stability. It meant I could help Molly with a new roof. It meant I could co-sign for Harry's first, sensible car, which he totaled 6 months later. It meant I could pay for the family vacations Molly insisted we take. Just the 3 of us, where I would pay for everything while Harry complained about the hotel and Molly fretted over his lack of direction. My entire life was a series of sacrifices, each one packaged as a choice. I chose to stay local. I chose to be responsible. I chose to put their needs first, and they, in turn, chose to accept it as their due. Harry's lack of direction became his entire personality. He was a creative, a free spirit. He dabbled in graphic design, then music production, then day trading. Each passion required startup capital, which I provided in the form of loans that were never, ever repaid. Molly encouraged it. "He's just finding himself, Juliet," she'd say, her hand patting mine. "You were always so focused. It's harder for sensitive souls like your brother." Sensitive was the word she used for unbearably selfish. Focused was her word for burdened. Molly, for her part, was the master of passive-aggressive guilt. She was a retired schoolteacher, a pillar of her local book club, a woman who presented herself as a soft-spoken, gentle soul. But underneath that cardigan-wearing exterior was a will of iron and a terrifying ability to manipulate. She never raised her voice. She never had to. She could get what she wanted with a disappointed sigh, a well-timed tear, or the classic phrase, "Don't you think you're being a little selfish, dear?" Her primary antagonist in this dynamic wasn't me, but my success. She resented it, even as she and Harry benefited from it. My career was the other woman in our family. It was the cold and demanding thing that took me away from my real responsibilities. Which were, of course, Harry. The job I'd gotten for Harry was a massive favor owed to me by a colleague. It was a genuine opportunity. His dismissal of it as boring wasn't just lazy, it was a direct insult. It was his way of saying that the world I excelled in, the world that paid for his rent, was beneath him. And my mother, with her "fix this," was reinforcing that toxic belief. She was the primary antagonist, the one who had spent 20 years molding Harry into a weapon of entitlement and aiming him directly at my bank account. Harry was just the spoiled, clueless arrow. Molly was the archer. This context was vital because it explained why my reaction wasn't just about this one incident. It was about 2 decades of accumulated resentment. It was about the mortgage I paid, the vacations I couldn't take, the relationships that had failed because I was always on call for a family emergency. My little brother, the aspiring entrepreneur who had never held a job for more than a year, had called me irresponsible. And my mother, the woman I had supported and revered, had backed him up. This wasn't a fight, it was a structural collapse. The foundation of our family, built entirely on my uncomplaining sacrifice, had just given way, and I was no longer interested in rebuilding the same condemned house. I was ready to build something new somewhere else. Far, far away. The morning after my exit strategy session, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The battle lines were drawn. Molly was coming over at 11 a.m. after book club for the discussion. This gave me precisely 2 hours to set the stage. My first call was to Michael. He picked up on the second ring. "Juliet, I trust you slept on it and are still coming to Singapore?" he asked, his voice professional but with a hint of warmth. "Absolutely," I said, my voice crisp. "And I'm officially activating that legal help you mentioned. I have a feeling I'm going to need it today." "Good," he said. "The firm is Lawson, Tate, and Finch. I'll have their top estate lawyer, a woman named Ms. Alvarez, call you within the hour. She's a shark. And Juliet, whatever it is, handle it, I'll see you in Singapore." He hung up. Michael was a man of few words, but his message was clear. He had my back professionally. The rest was up to me. My second call was to my bank. I moved the majority of my liquid savings, the Harry Emergency Fund that I'd been subconsciously maintaining, into a new, high-yield savings account at a completely different bank, one with no physical branches in our state. I changed all my passwords. My third call was to a local locksmith. Yes, I need an emergency rekeying service at my address. Yes, right now, I'll pay the rush fee. The clever trap wasn't some dramatic, hidden document. It was my own financial independence, the very thing they mocked me for. My leverage was the simple, devastating fact that I was the only one in our family who was solvent. They had mistaken my generosity for an obligation. It was a fatal error in judgment. At 10:15 a.m., the locksmith finished. As he was packing up, I heard the elevator ding down the hall. My stomach clenched, but I took a deep breath, right on cue. Ms. Alvarez, the lawyer, called at 10:20 a.m. as promised. "Ms. Juliet?" Her voice was sharp, all business. "Michael briefed me. You're restructuring assets and anticipating family complications. Let's talk trusts. Irrevocable." I sat at my kitchen island, the same spot where I'd had my meltdown less than 24 hours ago, and began to calmly and methodically dismantle the financial structure my family had come to depend on. As I spoke to Ms. Alvarez about living wills and powers of attorney, I was also, in my head, investigating. I thought about the house. It was my mother's house, yes, but I had been paying the property taxes for 5 years. I'd also paid for the new roof 3 years ago and the new furnace just last winter. I had the receipts, digital copies of every last one, saved in a cloud folder labeled house maintenance. I thought about the car. Molly's car was in her name, but I was the one who made the insurance payments. Again, I had the records. And then I thought about Harry. I pulled up the bank statements from the last 5 years. The transfers were all there, a sickeningly long list. Rent, car payment, loan, help, it totaled. I did a quick calculation. It was staggering. It was well into the 6 figures. "Ms. Alvarez," I interrupted my own train of thought. "How difficult is it to file a civil suit for repayment of documented personal loans, even if there was no formal contract?" There was a pause. If you have a clear pattern of transfers and text messages or emails acknowledging them as loans, you can build a case. It's messy, but it's possible. Why are we going after someone? "We're keeping it as an option," I said, a cold knot of resolve tightening in my stomach. "A nuclear option." At 11:02 a.m., my intercom buzzed. I ignored. It buzzed again, a long, impatient push. Then silence. I pictured Molly standing in the lobby, frowning at the call box. A minute later, I heard the telltale sound of a key scratching against my lock. Scratch, jiggle, scratch, a frustrated grunt. Then a sharp, angry knock. "Juliet, open this door. I know you're in there. Your car is in the garage." I took a deep breath, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. My mother stood there, her face pinched with annoyance. Her gentle soul facade was already cracking. I opened the door, but only by the length of the new, heavy-duty chain latch I'd had the locksmith install. "Juliet, what is the meaning of this? Why doesn't my key work? Take this chain off." "Hello, Molly," I said, my voice calm and even. "My key? I'm sorry, I think you mean your key to my apartment. I've had the locks changed." Molly's face went through a rapid series of emotions. Confusion, then indignation, then a flash of pure, unfiltered anger. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look at me with anything other than mild disappointment or manipulative affection. "You changed the locks? On me?" she sputtered, pushing against the door as if her 120-pound frame could snap the new steel chain. "Don't be ridiculous, Juliet. Open this door right now. We need to talk about your brother." "We are talking," I said, my voice remaining perfectly level. I leaned my shoulder against the doorframe, projecting an aura of casual indifference. "You're right, we do need to talk about Harry, but we're going to do it from here. I am not going to have a serious family discussion through a crack in the door," she hissed, her voice low and furious. "What has gotten into you? Harry is distraught. He called me last night beside himself. You were so cruel to him." "Cruel," I repeated, tasting the word. Was I, or was I just, what was his word? Irresponsible, I decided to take his advice. I'm shedding my responsibilities. And my first act of shedding is this: I am no longer funding his lifestyle. "Lifestyle?" Molly scoffed, her hand grasping the door jamb as if to keep me from closing it. "He is your brother. He's just trying to find his footing. You know how hard it is for him." "He's 29, Mom. He's not finding his footing. He's actively avoiding the ground. He quit a job I got for him, a good job, because it was boring." And then he had the audacity to insult me for being the exact opposite. He didn't mean it, she insisted, her voice starting to rise, attracting the attention of my neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, who poked her head out of her door down the hall. Molly shot her a venomous look, and the door quickly shut. He was upset, you know how he gets. Now you are going to call him, apologize for upsetting him, and you are going to give him the money for his rent. It's the least you can do. There it was, the command, not a request, not a discussion, a directive. The CEO of family was giving her subordinate an order. The least I can do? I asked, a dangerous little laugh escaping my lips. The least I can do? Mom, do you have any idea what the most I've done is? I just spent the last hour with my bank statements. Do you know how much money I have given Harry in the last 5 years? She blinked, thrown by the question. That's not the point. We don't keep score in a family, Juliet. We help each other. Over $130,000, Mom, I said, my voice sharp and loud enough for Mrs. Petrov to hear through her door. $130,241, to be precise. I helped him to the tune of a down payment on a house. I helped him to the tune of a brand new Mercedes. I helped him to the tune of my own retirement fund. Molly's face went pale. She had no idea. She genuinely had no idea of the scale. She just saw the little bits of help here and there. She never saw the crushing, cumulative total. You're lying, she whispered. He would never. It was just for rent here and there. It was for failed startups, Mom. It was for crypto scams. It was for credit card debt he racked up on networking trips to Miami, and you encouraged it. You told me to fix it. Every single time. She was completely flat-footed. The script had been tossed out. This wasn't the part where I was supposed to cry and apologize. And now, I continued, pressing my advantage, Harry has made his position clear. I'm just a cold-hearted career woman with no real responsibilities. So, I've decided to embrace that. I'm taking a promotion, Mom, a big one. This finally seemed to get through to her. A promotion? Oh, Juliet, that's wonderful. At the firm here. Hope dawned on her face. A promotion meant more money. More money meant more for Harry. No, I said, and I let a cold, bright smile spread across my face. In Singapore, I'm moving in 6 weeks. I've accepted the position of Director of Southeast Asian Operations. The blood drained from her face. Singapore, that wasn't a car ride away. That was a 20-hour flight. That was another continent. That was, for all intents and purposes, another universe. Singapore, she breathed the word full of horror. You can't. What about? What about me? What about Harry? Who will? Who will fix things? I finished for her. That, Mom, is the new question, isn't it? Harry is a vision guy. You're the one who always understands him. I'm sure between the two of you, you'll figure out his rent. You selfish girl, she finally shrieked, all pretense of the gentle, retired teacher gone. Her face was mottled with rage. After everything I've done for you, after all the sacrifices I made to raise you, this is how you repay me. You abandon your family. Repay you? I said, my voice dropping to an icy whisper. I've been repaying you my entire adult life. I've paid my dues. I've paid Harry's dues too, and as of today, the bank is closed. My resignation from the position of family fixer is effective immediately. I unlatched the chain and began to close the door. Juliet, you wait, you can't do this. She slammed her hand flat against the wood, pushing it open. Her eyes were wild. I'm your mother, you owe us, you owe me. I owe you nothing, I said, putting my full weight into the door. But Harry, he owes me $130,000, and I'm having my lawyer draft the letter to demand repayment. You have a nice day, Molly. I slammed the door shut and threw the deadbolt. The last sound I heard was a strangled scream of pure, unadulterated rage, followed by the sound of her fists beating uselessly against the solid oak. The silence that followed the slamming of the deadbolt was profound. I stood there for a full minute, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had done it. I had finally, truly said no. The backlash was immediate. My phone, which I'd left on the island, began to vibrate so violently it skittered across the granite. A non-stop barrage of calls and texts from Molly. Then, predictably, from Harry. I didn't look at them. I simply put my phone on Do Not Disturb and silenced it. The visual of the screen lighting up again and again, however, was its own kind of psychological warfare. Molly, clearly, had driven straight from my condo to Harry's apartment, because the tenor of the texts, which I could see in the lock screen previews, changed. Molly, Juliet, you have destroyed this family. Harry is a wreck. Molly, he says you're lying about that money. How dare you, Harry, a lawyer? Are you insane? You can't sue me. Harry, I'll sue you for harassment. Slander. Molly, you will call off your lawyer right now, Juliet. This is not a request. This was the desperate attempt to regain control. The threats were so poorly executed, so childish, that I almost laughed. Slander? For stating a fact, it only solidified my resolve. They weren't just manipulative, they were fundamentally incompetent. They had relied on my competence for so long, they had no idea how to function without it. I forwarded screenshots of the texts to Ms. Alvarez with a simple note. For the file. She replied almost instantly. This is excellent. It establishes their state of mind and confirms they understood the money was a debt, not a gift. The demand letter is on its way to your brother's address via courier. It will arrive by 5 p.m. I suggest you stay somewhere else tonight. She was right. My condo was no longer a sanctuary. I packed an overnight bag, grabbed my work laptop, and checked into a hotel near my office. The investigation phase was over. The case-building phase was in full swing. For the next 2 weeks, I lived out of that hotel. I went to work, where I began the official process of handing over my current projects and coordinating with the Singapore team. My boss, Michael, was a fortress of support. He handled all internal HR, expedited my visas, and made it clear to everyone that I was on a fast track and not to be disturbed. Meanwhile, the family situation escalated. Harry, upon receiving the legal letter detailing his $130,241 debt and a proposed repayment plan, lost his mind. He left me a string of voicemails, each one more unhinged than the last. They ranged from pathetic begging, "Jules, come on, I'm your brother, I'll pay you back, I swear, just not now," to incoherent rage, "You'll never see a dime. That was a gift. Mom said it was a gift." Molly tried a different, more insidious tactic. She mobilized the flying monkeys. My Aunt Linda called. "Juliet, dear, your mother is just worried sick. She says you're having some kind of breakdown, quitting your job, suing your brother. It's not like you, honey." "I'm not having a breakdown, Aunt Linda. I got a promotion. And I'm not suing Harry, I'm asking him to repay the loans I gave him." "Oh, but loans, in a family, it's just unseemly." My cousin Mark, whose college graduation party I had paid for, texted me. "Hey Juliet, heard you're being pretty rough on Harry. Kinda cold, don't you think?" This was Molly's masterstroke, painting me as the cold, unstable, money-obsessed villain. The narrative was set. I was the one abandoning the family, not the one who had been bled dry by it. The final, irrefutable proof of their collusion came a week before my flight. Ms. Alvarez called me. "Juliet," she said, and I could hear the grim satisfaction in her voice. "We have a problem, a good one for our case. Your mother just co-signed a lease on a new, high-end apartment for your brother, in a luxury building downtown." I was stunned. "What? How? She's on a retired teacher's pension. She can't possibly afford that." "She can't," Ms. Alvarez agreed. "Which is why, to prove her income, she appears to have falsified some documents." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "She submitted bank statements to the leasing company, statements that show large, regular deposits from an investment. She also listed herself as a consultant for a small firm." "I don't understand." We did a quick search on the firm. It was one of Harry's ventures. A shell LLC he created 2 years ago and dissolved last month. "And the investment deposits? The routing number matches your old account, Juliet. She's been taking the money you've been giving her for household expenses and property taxes and funneling it directly to Harry, creating a paper trail to make him look solvent." There it was, it wasn't just enabling, It was a conspiracy, a long-term, calculated, fraudulent deception. My mother hadn't just backed him up. She was his co-conspirator. The money I gave her for the roof, for the furnace, for her insurance, God knows where it had really gone. She had been actively defrauding me for years, all to maintain her precious, perfect, irresponsible boy. "Ms. Alvarez," I said, my voice shaking with a cold, precise rage I had never known I possessed. "Change the demand letter, make it a formal lawsuit, file it, and add Molly as a co-defendant for conspiracy to commit fraud." "With pleasure," she replied. The struggle was over. The spell was broken. It wasn't just Harry I was cutting off. It was Molly. It was the entire rotten, parasitic system they had built with me as the unwilling host. The second confrontation wouldn't be with me. It would be with the legal summons they were about to be served. My last week in the country was a whirlwind of packing, goodbyes, and legal preparations. I had movers pack up my entire condo, putting everything into long-term storage. I sold my car. I signed the final papers for Ms. Alvarez, officially filing the civil suit against both Harry and Molly. I was liquidating my entire life. I had sent one final, coordinated email to my extended family. Aunt Linda, Cousin Mark, everyone who had tried to counsel me. It was not an emotional plea. It was a dossier. It contained the itemized list of loans to Harry, the screenshots of his and Molly's abusive texts, and, as the piece de resistance, the preliminary report from Ms. Alvarez's forensic accountant, showing the flow of money from my account to Molly's, and then to Harry's various failed schemes. I wrote, "I am not having a breakdown. I am rectifying a long-term financial imbalance. I have been the victim of a calculated deception by my mother and brother for years. The attached documents are self-explanatory. I am moving to Singapore for a promotion, and I will not be contacting any of you again. Any further communication will be forwarded to my legal counsel." The silence from them was absolute. The flying monkeys had been grounded. My flight was on a Saturday. On Friday evening, I was having a farewell dinner with my boss, Michael, and a few close colleagues at a high-end restaurant downtown. It was a celebratory, cheerful affair. I was relaxed, laughing, talking about the new apartment my company had secured for me in Singapore. I felt lighter than I had in my entire life. As we were finishing dessert, the restaurant manager approached our table, a nervous look on his face. "Excuse me, Ms. Juliet, there are some people at the front who are demanding to see you. They say it's a family emergency." My blood turned to ice. Michael looked at me, his brow furrowing. "Do you want us to handle this?" I shook my head, a slow, grim smile touching my lips. "No, it's fine. It seems my family wants a public showdown. Let's not disappoint them." I stood up and walked to the restaurant's lobby. And there they were. Molly and Harry. They looked terrible. Molly's eyes were red and swollen, her hair a mess. Harry looked like he hadn't slept in a week, his face pale and clammy. They had clearly been served the lawsuit. "Juliet," Molly shrieked the moment she saw me, lunging forward. The manager put a hand out to stop her. "You have to stop this. They're going to put a lien on my house. The bank called me. They're investigating the lease application." "That's what happens when you commit bank fraud, Mom," I said, my voice cool and clear. The lobby was quiet, other patrons turning to stare. "You did this," Harry yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. He was wearing a stained t-shirt and jeans. You ruined us. You always had to be the successful one, rubbing our noses in it. You're a monster." "I'm a monster?" I asked, taking a step toward him. He instinctively flinched. "I'm the monster. I'm not the one who's been stealing from his sister for a decade. I'm not the one who's been lying and falsifying documents. I'm the one who paid for every meal you've eaten, every roof you've slept under, every stupid venture you've failed at. You're not a vision guy, Harry. You're a leech. A common, pathetic leech." You can't talk to me like that," he stammered. "I can," I said, "because you have nothing. You have no power over me. That money, it's gone. The apartment you just leased, you're being evicted for fraud. And Mom's house, the one I paid to maintain, yes, my lawyer is putting a lien on it. for the exact amount of the repairs and taxes I paid. It's called justice. Molly finally found her voice, but it was no longer a shriek. It was a broken, desperate sob. "Juliet, please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. This was her final weapon, the tearful mother. "You can't. I'm your mother. We're family. Think of your father. He would be so ashamed of you." That was it. That was the last line. "He would be ashamed of me," I said, my voice dangerously low. "He would be ashamed of me. He would be devastated. He would be heartbroken that his wife and his son turned into grifters, that they preyed on his daughter, the only one who actually did what she was supposed to do. You want to talk about shame? Shame is a 60-year-old woman committing fraud to cover for her 29-year-old deadbeat son. Shame is sitting there while that son insults the one person keeping your entire pathetic world afloat. You don't get to use his name. Not ever again." Harry looked stunned. He had never, ever heard me speak this way. He looked at Molly, expecting her to fix it, to deploy the guilt and bring me to heel. But Molly was just staring at me, her mouth open, the tears frozen on her face. She saw me. For the first time, she wasn't looking at Juliet, the fixer. She was looking at the director of Southeast Asian operations, and she was terrified. Harry, seeing his enabler broken, made one last desperate move. He puffed out his chest. "You know what? Fine, go to China or wherever. See if we care. We don't need you. We'll be fine without you." It was such a pathetic, hollow boast that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I looked at him, then at Molly. Then I smiled. "I know you will," I said, my voice suddenly light. "You're both so incredibly resourceful." I turned my back on them. "Juliet, don't you walk away from me. Juliet," Harry's voice cracked. I walked back to my table without looking back. My colleagues were staring, wide-eyed. Michael, however, was just smiling. He raised his wine glass. "To Singapore," he said. I sat down, picked up my own glass, and clinked it against his. "To Singapore." Behind me, I heard the restaurant manager firmly telling Molly and Harry that he was calling security. I took a long, slow sip of my wine. It was the most delicious thing I had ever tasted. My flight to Singapore was the next day. As the plane took off, I watched my hometown shrink below me until it was just a meaningless grid of lights. I put in my noise-canceling headphones, turned on a movie, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt truly, completely at peace. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. The first few months in Singapore were a whirlwind. I dove into my new role, working 70-hour weeks, but for the first time, the work was exhilarating. I was building new teams, streamlining complex shipping routes, and negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts. I was good at it. I was thriving. My new salary was more than I had ever made, and my company treated me with an incredible amount of respect. I had a beautiful apartment overlooking the Marina Bay, and I was making new friends, colleagues who saw me as Juliet, the sharp and capable director, not Juliet, the fixer. Back home, the consequences I had set in motion continued to unwind, but why felt a world away. Ms. Alvarez updated me via email. The lawsuit, as expected, was a slam dunk. Faced with irrefutable evidence of fraud and a civil case they couldn't possibly win, Molly and Harry folded completely. Molly had to take out a massive reverse mortgage on her house, the house I was no longer maintaining, to pay the settlement. It wasn't the full $130,000, but it was a significant six-figure sum that Ms. Alvarez had negotiated, covering all my legal fees and the provable loans and maintenance costs. It was enough to wipe out most of her equity, and more importantly, it was a legal and final admission of their guilt. Harry was evicted from the luxury apartment. The fraud investigation by the leasing company had ruined his credit, making it impossible for him to rent anywhere decent. The last I heard, through a single, final email from Aunt Linda, an email that was a groveling apology, Harry was living in Molly's spare bedroom. He had been forced to get a job, a real one, at a local big-box store, working night stock, to help Molly pay the new, crippling mortgage. The aspiring entrepreneur was finally a spreadsheet monkey, or the equivalent, and he was miserable. About a year after my move, I received a letter at my office in Singapore. It was handwritten on Molly's familiar floral stationery. My first instinct was to throw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. It was a long, rambling, self-pitying letter. It talked about how hard her life was, how much she missed me, how Harry was so depressed, and hadn't been the same since I left. It was filled with "I'm sorry, but..." and "if only you could find it in your heart to." Tucked inside was a check for $50. On the memo line she had written, "First repayment." It was the most pathetic, manipulative gesture I could have imagined. A $50 check against a six-figure debt. It wasn't an apology. It was an attempt to open a door, to restart the cycle, to see if the Bank of Juliet was open for business again, even in a small way. I looked at the check for a long time. Then, I picked up a pen, wrote "void" across the front in large, black letters, tore it into 4 perfect pieces, and dropped it into the shredder next to my desk. My resolution wasn't about the money. I had already written that off. My resolution was the silence. It was the peace of my new life. It was the joy I found in my work and the genuine, healthy relationships I was building. It was the fact that my phone no longer gave me a jolt of anxiety when it rang. The ultimate downfall for Molly and Harry wasn't just financial. It was that they were forced to live with the consequences of their own actions. They had to exist in the very world they had created, without me as their buffer. Harry had to face his own incompetence, and Molly had to face the monster of entitlement she had so lovingly raised. They were trapped together, in the house I had paid for, bound by the mutual resentment of what they had lost. And I was free. I was 8,000 miles away, thriving. My vindication wasn't loud. It was the quiet, profound, and indisputable fact that I had been right. I had saved myself. And in doing so, I had finally made them take responsibility for themselves.